Hello and welcome to JSB Talks Digital, the podcast for marketers, digital change champions, and those of you bringing your skills into the digital age. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke and this podcast is brought to you by Digital Training Institute. This episode comes to you from Druids Glen in County Wicklow, where I'm attending the EPP Group's Bureau meeting. The European People's Party is the largest political grouping in the EU Parliament. Fine Gael is a member, as well as the Christian Democrats, headed by German Chancellor Angela Merkel. In this podcast, I aptly discuss the role of social media in political communications. In a week where France elects its youngest ever president, I pose the question, is digital communications revolutionising electioneering as we know it?
Social media news.
In an exciting development, Facebook users can now react to comments with emojis. The feature allows users to react quickly to discussions under users' posts and status updates with the like button and now with reactions, love, haha, wow, sad and angry. To reply to a comment with one of the emojis, all users need to do is hover over the like button directly below the comment and wait for the faces to appear. Previously, users could either like a comment or reply to it with text or an image. Facebook first introduced its reactions emojis a year ago, but back then, users could only use them on posts and updates and not on comments. They've since landed on Messenger too, where they work in the exact same way. It looks like Snapchat users are a unique audience and many cannot be targeted by Facebook or Instagram. New research has looked at cross-app usage between Snapchat and the other top social app. Overall, the most overlap occurred with Facebook's main apps, Facebook, Instagram and Messenger. The new research by App Annie Intelligence has revealed that on any given day in the US, 35% of Snapchat's daily users cannot be reached by Facebook, 46% can't be reached by Instagram, and 58% can't be reached by Messenger. As marketers, we should be taking notice that a significant number of Snapchat users are not using Facebook on a daily basis. The lesson from this research, in my opinion, is that a one-platform-fits-all strategy will not win over the high-spending, highly influential Gen Z demographic who want a more personalised social media experience. Did you know you can now search Twitter for emojis? I really don't know how this latest social media feature update is going to add value to marketers, but you can now search Twitter for emojis. A quick search for random emojis revealed random tweets and lots of spam. If we are to use this new feature strategically, should we have bespoke groups or pairs of emojis that we tell our followers to use to share, engage or promote a particular conversation, just like the way we use hashtags? However, I can see one clear benefit. Because of Twitter's 140 character limit, emojis can be helpful as an emoji can replace a whole word.
Interview.
In today's show, I speak to Dr. David Sirikoff, Director of the Atlantic Academy. Founded in 1996 by the state government of Rhineland-Palatinate in Germany, the Atlantic Academy is a state and privately funded non-profit and non-partisan organisation whose goal is to foster transatlantic relations by educating the public about US-American politics and society. David joined a panel of experts at the EPP Group Bureau meeting in Wicklow, and I asked him if he thought that social media is impacting politics in the digital age.
JSB Talks Digital.
Yeah, of course. And so this increasing role of social media, especially on Facebook and Twitter, I think that when we take a look at the US election in the last year, 2016, then we can see what implication and what effect this growing importance of social media has. And we can see that we need more kind of control in this social media sphere, because there are a lot of fake news out there. There are a lot of so-called sources with falsehood and fake news, and I would suggest that we have to improve professionalism in the journalism, and we have to support professionalism for journalists in Europe as well as in the US.
Because, of course, what social media does is that it gives every one of us, you and I, and what we now call the citizen journalist, a voice. And do you think this is contributing in some way to the rise of the populist parties?
In some ways, yes. I'm not, but I'm not a foe of the social media. I'm a defender and I'm a supporter of social media, because social media and a broadened view on news, I think this is part of transparency. And what we need is journalists who take a look in the details, and this is what we did not see in the U.S. elections. It was all about headlines, it was all about so-called scandals. It was all about things, for instance, the email so-called scandal of Hillary Clinton, which was in fact no scandal, really. And here we need professional journalists who take a look in the details, who take a look in the different positions, in the different perspectives, and give us a good account of this problem or of this scandal or whatever.
And I was just addressing a group of radio journalists 2 weeks ago in Dublin, and the very point that they said was there's been a huge underinvestment in our profession over the past decade. So digital has grown, social media has matured to a massive extent. They haven't been able to keep up. So essentially it's perhaps something as simple as a resource issue.
Yeah, that's it. With regard to the US, in the last couple of years, we have a development, which is that we have a tremendous increase in the amount of or in the number of PR people, and we have a decrease in the amount or in the number of journalists. At the moment, we have a relation of 4 PR people on 1 journalist. And so you can see that those 4 PR people try to influence this 1 journalist. And this is a matter of money, it's a matter of funding, and it's a matter of professionalism.
And I work in the area of digital marketing, and I do say to people, you can control the internet. So you're absolutely right. Dr. David Surikov, an absolute pleasure, and thanks for joining me on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm here in Druids Glen in County Wicklow for the EPP Group Bureau meeting. Over the course of 2 days, the main conversations that the MEPs and the stakeholders are having is all about Brexit and its impact on Ireland. Now, while I do have an interest on Brexit, my main reason for being here is to assess what do modern day politicians think about social media and its role in political communications.
JSB Talks Digital.
Mairead McGuinness, MEP, you're also First Vice President of the EU Parliament and very active on social media as well. How much of a role do you think social media plays in the current digital age when it comes to politics?
Well, we can't ignore it and we have to be part of it. It is important, and it's certainly there are different audiences for different forms of social media. But there are downsides as well, because it's an extra dimension to the job. In my view, it is only one part of how I communicate. The key for politicians is to talk to people directly and meet them directly. You cannot beat the physical hand-to-hand handshake, the hug, the eyeballing your citizens. They deserve that we go to the constituency and talk to them. Social media helps in the bridging of that, but really you cannot live by social media alone. On the other hand, you cannot live without it.
Does it help bridge the gap, given that you're based in Brussels and Strasbourg a lot and not always in the constituency?
I think too much is made of that because I think the word Brussels has a bad connotation. I just happen to do my job in that particular place, but my constituency is Ireland, Midlands North West, 15 counties. I live in Ireland, I breathe Irish air, I care about my constituency and my constituents, and I'm about as much as I can be for one person in that big area. So yes, it helps. So does radio, vital. So do newspapers, really important, photographs. But let's really make this point that people vote for people, not social media gurus. They want to see us, feel us, hear us, know what we think, know what we look like, know how we feel and how they feel. So it's just another part of how we talk and how we communicate. But I wouldn't disband with the past and how we've done our business in the past. And maybe we need to concentrate more on that.
And so where can people find you on social media?
Well, on Twitter, Mairead MacG MEP. On Instagram, I think it's the same. And on Facebook as well. But they can also text. They can even write letters. And I have to say, those who write letters to us are very precious. They're few, but it's really nice to get a letter. And actually, sometimes we get nice thank you letters, which is really, really nice. So don't dismiss the stamp and the envelope and the phone call and all of those things. In a way, it was easier when there was only a few lines of communication or methodologies. Today, there's so many. You wonder, are there too many?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
JSB Talks Digital.
Sean Kelly, there's been lots of conversations over the last 2 days about the impact of Brexit on the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and indeed today on the impact of the UK when we heard from Tony Blair. But my particular interest is that, how much does social media and social commentary play a role in political communications, and do you find social media a challenge for you, even in your own role as an MEP?
Well, I think there's no doubt about it. Social media is becoming more and more important in communicating, and especially for young people, and as they grow up, more and more of the population are going to be engaging on it. It's a wonderful way to communicate instantly, to get ideas going, to ask for a retweet if you want something extra done, and all that is wonderful. The only downside of it I see at the moment is that people are inclined to follow people of the same views themselves, and they can also gang up on individuals. There can be negative side to it. So I think it needs to be a little more transparent, and I'm not too sure how anonymous people should be allowed to be, especially if they're being highly critical and abusive of maybe people in the public eye, be they politicians or business people or artists or whatever. So I think that needs to be addressed, but apart from that, it's a great way to communicate and it keeps us all happy. If we didn't have our iPhone now, I think we'd be very, very much lost all the time, and our hands would be moving all over
and
the place.
Do you enjoy social media yourself? Do you find it useful?
I love it.
Yeah.
It actually fills all the gaps, and trying to keep up with it is probably the most difficult thing, because sometimes it can be addictive. You sit down and time is going by, but there's always something new coming up, and you keep watching it, and then you might respond. So you have to learn to be disciplined in terms of time management, otherwise it could consume you. And I think that would be probably a challenge for young people as well. Yeah. You often hear that they spend too much time on the iPad or the iPhone or whatever, and I think that's really the question of balancing both.
But do you find it really useful for you to be able to engage with young people who might not necessarily be watching, the BBCs or the RTEs of this world now?
Yeah, I find it great, and it's wonderful. You go to some place and somebody says, I know you. I say, where did I meet you? I met you on Facebook, or I follow you on Twitter. And they would have all your views, and they'd say, I like your views, or I don't like your views. And that's wonderful. You're reaching an audience that you couldn't possibly reach physically, especially for an MEP, because we're over in Brussels or Strasbourg 4 days a week, or 5 days a week. We have a huge constituency to cover, so you just couldn't do it. But you can actually communicate with them all, theoretically at least, through social media. You can do that any other way. So
we've got an election coming down the line in 2019. Do you think that social media will replace the shoe leather and the knocking on the doors?
It probably won't replace it, but in some respects it might be more effective, because I have to ask myself, again, you go from door to door, but what percentage of the voting population do you reach? Every other politician is doing the same. So Does it make a huge impact, especially in European elections? How people vote, I'm not too sure. At local election it's different because everything local, people want to know the local individual and they expect him or her to call. But again, at a European level, I think it's slightly different perspective, and that will have to be reassessed to get the best possible tool to communicate. But definitely social media is going to play a bigger and bigger role in all elections in the future. And the bigger the voting population, obviously, the more effect social media will have.
Okay, so finally you can tell our viewers your favourite social networks and where can they find you?
Find me on Facebook, and you'll find me on Twitter in particular.
Yeah.
I do most of Twitter myself. We do Facebook at night time when we get the chance, but you can obviously then email or whatever. I'm doing the whole lot.
Sean Kelly, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
48 MEPs, 70 members of the international media community here in Druids Glen in County Wicklow for 2 days at the EPP Group Bureau meeting. They're here to discuss the impact of Brexit on Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and with Tony Blair's visit today, the impact on the UK.
JSB Talks Digital.
Very pleased to be invited here to the EPP meeting because obviously it's the largest group in the European Parliament. As one of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement, which brought into being the peace process in Northern Ireland, I'm extremely anxious to make sure that Brexit does not impair that agreement, that we continue to have the closest possible relationship between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. There are really important and difficult challenges in this. At the moment we have a common travel area where people can travel freely between south and north, north and south on the island of Ireland. This is vital to maintain. In addition, the open border between the north and south is, in terms of trade, has done an immense amount for UK-Irish trade and commercial relationships. And obviously it's important that though there will be difficult challenges in relation to this, that we again safeguard as much of that as possible and minimise any potential damage. I did explain to the EPP that I think whatever disagreements I have with the British government over Brexit more generally, I think there is a real consensus across the British political system that we must do everything we possibly can to keep the present situation between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, south and north, as similar to what we have at the moment as we possibly can, and do all we can to minimise any potential disruption. This is of vital importance for the economic relationships, but also for the political relationships. So it was enormously beneficial to be able to talk to the EPP and to speak to them about that, and of course, obviously, broader questions about Europe. But I know from what the Taoiseach said yesterday, and what Michel Barnier said yesterday also, and in a sense my presence here today is to say I think there is a really common desire, whatever other issues there are in relation to Brexit, to make Northern Ireland a special case and make sure that we do everything we possibly can to protect the Good Friday Agreement, the peace process, and to protect that strong relationship between the Republic of Ireland and the UK going forward. Thank you very much.
In 2012, a US study found that 38% of people actually share political messages on their social networks. So it's no surprise then that politicians are actually drawn to social media. I've used the opportunity here in Wicklow to speak to a number of MEPs. I've asked them, do you enjoy social media? Does it help you when it comes to political communications? Are there any challenges? And how do you see you using it in upcoming elections?
JSB Talks Digital.
Esteban González Pons, your speech at the EU Parliament on the 25th of March went viral on Facebook. Almost 10 million people have seen it. Do you think 10 years ago your speech would have reached so many people of all ages, of all geographies and of all demographics?
No, of course not. But perhaps neither 3 months ago. I think that the key of this video is that we have discovered that we need to translate our speeches. And if we talk a common language, it's easier to everybody to understand what we are saying or we are doing, having a common language. So I think that the best is not the video, is that we translated it. And if in the future we learn to translate videos, we are going to be much successful.
And do you think that perhaps one of the challenges of MEPs is that the work that you do is so complex, the institutions are so complex, that citizens of the member states feel removed from the conversations? But in this video, you used emotion and you used plain English and ordinary language to reach out to the people. And as I can see here, 170,000 people actually shared it. So they took an action, they were impacted by what you said, and they wanted to share it with their friends and their family.
Yeah, because we have to understand that Europe is not about institutions, it's about feelings. And we need the people to feel emotions about Europe, and we cannot talk only to their intelligence. We have to talk also to their hearts. So we have to explain in other Europe, in other terms. We have to explain Europe with other words and talk simply, direct, short sentences.
What we've seen, particularly when we talk about the US presidential election, we talk about the Brexit referendum, is that social media is being used for negative campaigning, and there's lots of examples. There's so many examples, but not so many examples of how social media can impact people with a positive message. And perhaps you were one of the few people that have managed to do this. What kind of reaction have you had from your political colleagues in the EU and even further afield?
Well, we are used to think that the social media is a bad influence for the voters, but everything what is bad in this life also can be good, and we can use in a good form social media. The reaction that I've had from my colleagues is that they want to do the same. I mean, this video is an example about what we can do if we use in a correct form social media. We have discovered lots of things with this, if I can say in this way, experiment. You know,
yes.
First I told you it was very important to translate what I was saying in Spanish. But second, let me say that WhatsApp is a very important social net, and people doesn't think that WhatsApp is a social net. Everybody thinks about Twitter or Facebook, but the way where this video has run longer, it's WhatsApp, it's not Facebook.
And WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, and as I know and you may know, 75% of social media conversations are happening in dark social, in apps like WhatsApp. So
or Telegram.
Or Telegram, and that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So as you develop your social media strategy, and we have the European elections coming down the road in 2019, are you going to be experimenting and strategizing more with social media?
Yeah, I'll continue. I'm a follower of the social media since the very beginning. Well, perhaps since before the beginning. I'll try to send positive messages, and I'll try to present myself not only as a politician, using also the social media. I use Twitter for the main political messages, but I use Instagram for showing my personal point of view about life.
Yeah. And that's important because you're a human being.
Yeah.
Yes? And you're showing your characteristics and the real you, and that you have a life outside of politics. And I think that's relevant.
Instagram is where I have a good time.
Okay. And of course, I follow you on those channels, but thank you so much for joining me on JSB Talks Digital.
Thank you very much.
JSB Talks Digital.
Manfred Weber, you're the chairperson of the EPP group, and you're an avid user of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. How do you think political communications has changed in the digital age with social media?
Well, fundamentally, that's obvious. There is a direct communication today possible. There is no journalist, nobody in between the politician and the citizens. That is a big chance, but although a challenge for all of us. Because you also have nobody anymore who is really checking facts, for example. You believe or you don't believe, nobody is checking anymore. That is normally the job of journalists. So we have to see the positive things and the negative things. For me, it's great because people are interested in what we are doing, what I'm doing, and it's good to communicate.
And we heard from Tony Blair today, the former British Prime Minister, on Brexit and his thoughts. And we had Michel Barnier here also, whose role it is to communicate about Brexit. Do you think that social media has an important role to play now in the aftermath of Brexit in terms of fact-checking? Can it play that role?
Absolutely, and social media are forcing us politicians to work on transparency. Yes. So that is what we have to do. In a modern world, in a modern society, people ask for information. That's absolutely fair. That is what we have to do as politicians. That's why we are in favor. That's the whole Brexit negotiations. When it comes now to the substance, but for example, the legal status of the citizens and so on, we have to put the facts on the table, that everybody has an understanding what is going on. On the other hand, I think it's important to include, because social media is interactive, so to include people's position in this. There, I want to say, as a personal reflection, sometimes it's more the negative voices, the populistic voices, if you allow me to say this, or sometimes even the very tough hate speeches in the social media, which are very dominant. And so, if you want really to use the new technologies in a proper way, everybody must contribute. So don't allow only the negative voices to be heard.
And do you think that the social networks have a role to play? We're here in Ireland. Most of the main social networks have their European headquarters in our capital, in Dublin. Only this week, Facebook have launched a series of print newspaper ads in the UK to advise people how to check against fake news on Facebook. And this is ahead of the upcoming UK elections. So from an EU perspective and the power that the EU institutions have, do you think that the social networks have a bigger role to play to kind of counteract fake news?
I'm very happy about these initiatives to take over responsibilities. These companies are earning a lot of money. They are very powerful, frankly speaking, in a globalized world. And that means, on the other hand, when you are powerful, you have responsibility. That is always combined in our thinking of our society. That's why it's good when they are doing this. On the other hand, there is always the state. So we as society who are defining the rules. It's not a company who is defining the rules, it is we as state. So for example, the question of privacy in the digital world, what I want to see publicly, what I want to have the right, whether I want to have the right to delete some of the statements I did in previous time, whether I want to delete some of the photos and so on in the global world, in the global internet. That is what are principal rights in our thinking as Europeans. And therefore you need a strong state. Therefore you need the European Union, because only we together as 500 million consumers with our market power which we have can really settle global standards in this globalized internet world. And that's why one thing is the engagement of the companies. I respect this and I support this, but the other thing is that not the companies are doing the rules. We as society, we as citizens are defining the rules under which they are doing their business.
Okay, so where can we find you on social media?
Well, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. So a lot of channels are open, and hopefully a lot of people are interested in. And I'm also looking for advice to make it more attractive. So we all learn with how we communicate, how we do this. and we want to do this together in a respectful way.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me on JSB Talks Digital, and I'd be happy at any stage to give you some advice on how to make your social better, but I think you're doing a great job.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you. As the mainstream media pack up and file the reports for TV, for radio and for print, I'm left here thinking, how is the political narrative going to develop over the next 2 years as we head into the 2019 European elections? There is absolutely no doubt that politicians have warmed to social media. They understand the benefits, but I actually wonder, do they actually understand the power and the opportunity that it presents to kill fake news and maybe to turn fans into voters? I will continue my work with the EPP group in Brussels on that very subject, and I will also continue to investigate the role of social media in political communications.
Shoutouts.
In this part of the show, I give shoutouts to brands, organisations or individuals whose work online is remarkable and worth talking about. In today's show, I'm sharing 3 political social media case studies.
1.
Emoji marketing is a thing, if you hadn't already realised it by now. Social media analytics software company TalkWalker released an infographic charting President Trump's first 100 days in office in emojis. Using TalkWalker's emoji theme cloud, they show how people reacted throughout his first few months. When it comes to elections and voting, the world is no stranger to social media conversations. Brexit, the new US president, and most recently, the French presidential elections have all been met with astounding levels of online discussion. Using the TalkWalker social media analytics tool, the search term Trump generated a staggering 67 million results in the last 30 days, and in a normal week, @real Donald Trump racks up more than 3 million mentions on Twitter. So Trump has an undeniably gigantic influence, and his tweets are a much more immediate way of communicating than whatever structures were in place before he took to the stage. You can view the infographic on the blog post associated with this podcast at digitaltraining.ie.
2.
A bad joke is always bad, but especially on social media. It's not that you can't or shouldn't include humour in your social media posts. That does work, as former US President Barack Obama demonstrated. It's that you should not do so if there is no other point to the status update. You'd think a PR executive would know better, but Justine Sacco turned her life upside down with one seriously unthought out tweet. Words can't do justice in describing this, so here is the tweet that started the whole fiasco. Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. It wasn't smart, but she did later explain that the post was intended as a joke against the widely held racist beliefs about Africans and AIDS. In an interview with John Ronson for his book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, Sacco explained, "Only an insane person would think that white people don't get AIDS. I thought there was no way that anyone could possibly think it was literal. Living in America puts us in a bit of a bubble when it comes to what is going on in the third world. I was making fun of that bubble." Unfortunately, though, many people didn't take the comments literally, and so the tweet rapidly went viral. The bottom line here is that making jokes in person is a lot easier than making them online. Written humour, especially on the internet, is best left to professionals.
3.
Never use the family of your opponent as pawns in a political attack, as it's not only unethical, not only unfair, but it can backfire on you badly. Here's an example from President Donald Trump that was roundly condemned, and also one of the rare occasions where he actually backed down. So, his tweet says, #Jeb Bush has to like the Mexican illegals because of his wife. If it's not clear, this retweet insinuates that Jeb Bush's wife is possibly an illegal immigrant and or supports illegals purely on the basis of her race. This was racist, defamatory, and frankly ungracious of Donald Trump, but he uncharacteristically backed down on this one.
Ask JSB.
Ask JSB brings the voices of my listeners onto the show. So you now have an opportunity to ask me a question, have it aired on the podcast, and I will respond. Simply log on to digitaltraininginstitute.ie/askjsb and submit your question, which arrives into my inbox as an MP3 audio file. If you are on mobile, download the app. If using desktop, simply record, listen back and send.
Hey Joanne, this is Emer. I've just finished my university, my last exam actually, and I'm conscious of my digital footprint before joining the world of work. What tips would you give me to do on a first audit and then to perfect my profiles? Thanks JSB!
Thank you for your question, Emer. It's a really important time in your life as you embark on your professional career, and in the digital age, online reputation is everything. Here's my top tips on how to audit and perfect your digital footprints. Number 1, Google yourself. If you find the results on the first 3 pages of Google are not you, then add in a specific keyword like the town you were from or the university you went to, and then redo your search. You want to see exactly what information the internet has on you. Write down the results that relate to you specifically, which will most likely be from LinkedIn, Twitter, or even Facebook. You might find media articles or college mentions. Then review whether the mentions are positive, negative, or neutral. Then go and set yourself up a Google alert for your name and your job title. Change this alert every time you get a new job. You will get emails from Google to tell you if you have been mentioned online. Of course, the emails will only come if you are mentioned. Review all your social network bios and rethink them based on the professional you. Do you need to delete any content that is not in line with what your employing companies would deem appropriate? Remember, 69% of hiring managers in Ireland review a prospective candidate's social networks before interview. If you are not already on LinkedIn, set up a profile and complete all the relevant sections. Find one really good profile matching somebody similar to your own and model it on theirs. Use professional headshots if possible, not cropped party images. I see lots of people doing this. And finally, start to use social media for the professional you. Of course, your private and personal accounts for friends and family don't have to cease. Neither do you have to pretend you are somebody you are not. Just be wise to the fact that the internet has an everlasting memory, and with every digital action, there is a possible reaction. Congratulations on finishing university, Emer, and best of luck in your professional career ahead. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Hi Joanne, Michael here. I just finished university and I am joining the world of accounting. What, in your opinion, is the number one social network for accountants and why? Thanks JSB.
Hi Michael, and thank you for your question. If I was to choose just one social network for accountants, it would have to be LinkedIn. LinkedIn is many things. Home to almost 500 million users around the world, it's the most professional social media network around, with only 12% of its user base having no college experience. As a result, the network has long been an effective tool for both recruitment and B2B marketing. But at the same time, it can also become a core part of managing your online reputation. Here are 3 quick start steps to take on LinkedIn that will boost your credibility in your industry. 1. Build an engaging profile. Everything on LinkedIn starts with your profile. Think of it as an online resume with added benefits. Here you can list your previous work experience, professional memberships, along with skills that might be relevant to your career. Next, connect with industry professionals. It's time to build your network. Connect with current and past colleagues who can also enhance your profile through written recommendations related to your experience and explicit endorsements of your skills. But don't be afraid to branch out beyond your existing professional connections either. For example, connect with JSB. And finally, create thought leadership content. You should not forget about one of LinkedIn's core features, the ability to make simple status updates, particularly if you have already expanded your connections to include not just colleagues, but in other industries. Share content that your connections will want to read. Thanks for your question, Michael, and best of luck in the world of accounting.
If you want to hear your voice on JSB Talks Digital, simply log on to digitaltraininginstitute.ie/Ask JSB, and you might find yourself and your question on air.
JSB's column.
In today's column, I'm sharing my insights on how to campaign, convert, and conquer by leveraging social media to turn fans into voters. It isn't that the political realm and the social media universe haven't ever met. In fact, some surprising statistics from 2012 tell us that 35% of social network users encouraged others to vote, 38% promoted political postings, and 28% posted links to political or politically related stories. Campaign. The core principles of running a social media campaign really don't vary from that of traditional political campaigns. It's still about the message, the place, and the people. The message of the political campaign is the heartbeat of the campaign, and that message doesn't alter because it is being delivered via social media. Just as it is with traditional campaigns, a good message needs to be seen and heard. That means finding the right places, or in this case, the right platforms to announce that message. What was once television commercials, mailings, and billboards has now become social media platforms, messengers, and personal engagement activity. The message of any campaign looking to take advantage of social media forums needs to be delivered through these channels. Simply put, if that message isn't put in a place where people can see it, it fails. It fails to reach its listeners and one day potential voters, because it's all about people at the end of the day. People elect candidates, so candidates need people. The right message that is delivered to the right place translates to victory. That means having a message that works and delivering that message to the place and in the forums that will reach them. This will position a campaign to convert them. Talking to people is one thing. Persuading, influencing, and convincing people is another animal altogether. Social media has permitted such influence as a result of its very nature and design. It starts with the root of familiarity, which allows for an easier connection that can then convince and win and turn fans into voters. The organic, friendly, and accustomed feel of social media platforms lends itself to your political message being more acceptable. Spams interrupt everything and feels like a nuisance. Even television commercials break into our favourite programmes, making them unwanted. Social media avenues are more subtle, natural to the user's environment, and are often more welcomed. That is where the opportunity for connection presents itself. People vote because they care, and they care because they are convinced that they should or maybe even need to. Your message is taken to their home. Your message connects with them on some level, and now through the conversations, engagements, and the influence afforded by social media, they can be convinced to care. So, how do you conquer? Win the hearts and minds of your fans. Talk to them and listen to them where they are, and many are on social media. There may not be greater evidence of how effective and powerful social media is than the last US presidential election. Go check out how many followers President Trump has on Twitter alone, and it begins to make sense. If you want to know more about developing a social media strategy for politics, then get in touch. Simply drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie.
Social media tool of the week.
The social media tool that saved my working week is Sentiment 140. Sentiment 140 allows you to discover the sentiment of a brand, product, or topic on Twitter. The tool was developed by Stanford University students. Assessing sentiment in your social media strategy is very important. So, while auditing a Twitter account this week, I use the tool to assess the brand sentiment of the Twitter profile. You can also search by keyword, for example, and include the name of a politician or an opponent to view their sentiment analysis. So how does it work? In their university paper, co-founders Alex Go, Risha Bayani and Li Hang state that the results of machine learning algorithms for classifying the sentiment of Twitter uses distant supervision. Our training data consists of Twitter messages with emoticons, which are used as noisy labels. This type of training data is abundantly available and can be obtained through automated means. If you want to find out more about this tool, log on to sentiment140.com and it's free to use. I also have the link to the co-founders paper on the blog associated with this podcast over at digitaltraining.ie. Thanks for tuning into this episode of JSB Talks Digital. To ensure you never miss an episode, make sure you subscribe on your smartphone on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also subscribe on SoundCloud. Don't forget to submit your social media or digital marketing questions at digitaltraininginstitute.ie/AskJSB. I do appreciate feedback, so please don't be a social media stranger. Send me a tweet to @tweetsbyJSB or send me a snap to JSB Snaps. I'm Joanne Sweeney Burke. This is JSB Talks Digital. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
JSB Talks Digital.